Hello and welcome to Planetary Evolution, a space to discuss our path to peace and consciousness. I'm your host, Jared Angaza. Today I want to talk to you about getting to the root of the problem. I believe that there are two primary forms of problem solving. One is root and one is symptom. And we have different ways that we address that. First of all, I believe that the maladies of the world, as I would call it, such as human trafficking, extreme poverty, economic inequality, racism, war, big one, climate change even. All of these things are symptoms of root causes rather than the root. I don't see these things as being the root of the problem. I see them as a symptom that we're fighting on the outside that continues to have a root that in many cases we are not addressing. However, I also believe that the symptoms, such as all of the things that I just addressed, are easier to get support for. They're sexier. They seem like something that you're involved. You're addressing some big crazy issue. There's a war going on, and there's an orphanage to be supported. There's a refugee camp that needs food. There's a child through Compassion International that needs support, and I want to put that postcard up on my refrigerator so that I feel good and other people understand that I'm helping and so on. There's nothing wrong with that at all, by the way, but it's still addressing a symptom. There's protesting, to climate change, fracking, or other initiatives to support fossil fuels and so on. There's protesting on the streets of all kinds of different things like right now. The Black Lives Matter protesting and things like that. There are instances of that protesting that are a form of addressing awareness. It's bringing people into awareness, like the Black Lives Matter movement is saying, you need to understand what's happening here right now. Awareness, as they say in AA, is the first step, becoming aware that there's a problem. That is absolutely needed, and it's a path to understanding our root causes of the symptoms that we're fighting. So let me break that down. If you are saying, I want to be involved with efforts to stop human trafficking, I say, okay, that's excellent. You can go in and you can do sting operations, you can support those, on and on and on. We see that with IJM, International Justice Mission, and they go in and they do a very effective job of addressing an immediate problem. There are girls locked in slavery. They need to get out. We're going to go in and extract them and shut that organization down that's oppressing them. That's great. That needs to be done. However, that specific issue, and IJM is doing lots of other initiatives to address root causes, but that specific initiative to just go in and stop it, remove the person from the problem, stop the perpetrator, and so on, that's a symptom. It's not a cause. It's not a root cause. Going in and putting another well in Africa, like Charity Water does, that's addressing a symptom, not necessarily a root cause. There are lots of examples of this. Going in and creating another war is an impatient response to addressing a symptom rather than a patient, thoughtful response to addressing a root cause. So while these things are very, very much needed, we need Charity Water, we need Compassion International, we need all these organizations that are addressing the awareness issues and things like that. We need them absolutely. That is important work. However, let us not be so distracted and so consumed by the fires that we see that need to be put out immediately, to the degree that we completely neglect the root causes that are continuing to perpetuate these fires. They're continuing to create fires, to pour fuel on those fires. We need to address the roots. However, the root of these causes are not sexy. They're not as easy to address. They're more complex. They're gray. They're not black and white, typically. It's not easy to quantify them and to check it off the list and say, okay, we've done this, we've done this, we've done this, and this was the result of this action, and so on and so on. It's kind of a murky gray area. It's difficult to create some captivating film that says, here's what we did this week when we went to this place and did this. And it's uncomfortable. Addressing these issues in general is uncomfortable, and getting involved in efforts to address these causes rather than the symptoms that are much more blatant. They're on the news. They're out there for everyone to see. I can get a postcard and put it up on my refrigerator and so on. Those are things that are easy to be attracted to being involved with. But let's be clear that they are addressing symptoms, not root. What happens is we remain occupied on these constant fires. What's the biggest, craziest fire? Our news is saturated with sensationalism and drama. And it keeps us distracted from addressing the root. We have, when I see, if we're talking specifically about root causes, we have to look at perspective. We have to look at economics. We have to look at propaganda. We have to come into that discussion. People so often dismiss those dynamics and say, hey, there's a lot of fires out here. We've got to fight these fires. And there's a movement going on, and we're getting really involved. And I got a t-shirt about it. And and on my Facebook status is going up dramatically because of my involvement and so on. Again, I'm not pointing fingers. None of those things are terribly wrong. And I'm certainly involved in many efforts to put out fires. But I'm also very, very focused, and that's what this show is primarily about, on addressing the perspectives that continue to create these cycles that just seem to never end. If we really want peace, if we really want equality, if we really want to be closer to an egalitarian type society, we're going to have the patience and the guts, and we're going to have to lay down maybe a little bit of our current social status to go in and address the root causes. And I believe that is rooted in the perspective that makes us believe that war is the best answer, that makes us believe that that our society will always, especially in America, will always just be full of guns, rather than saying, well, perhaps it'd be a better idea to not have so many guns in circulation. We can talk about gun control all day long and policies. We need more gun control. Okay, here's a good example. I think that gun control is a way of saying, okay, we've got a bunch of kids in a room and they're all fighting. Everybody's fighting. Okay, so let's remove the guns that are causing everyone to die while we're fighting. That's gun control. Not to say that gun control is perfect science. It's not. But let's remove the guns while everyone's fighting. But then let's address why everyone's fighting. Why is everyone fighting? Why does this guy believe that he has to have a gun to protect him from this guy? Usually it's because that guy has a gun. But I'm saying, that's great. You both have guns. Both don't have guns. Either way, you're still fighting. And I want to address, why are you fighting? Why do you believe that there's a problem? Why do you see yourself as being separate and different from this person when we are all created of the same energy and the same star stuff? We are all interconnected. These things are symptoms. And I feel like we get caught up in the symptoms because they are sexier. They are easier to get support for. They are right in our face. They are, our social media networks and our news networks are saturated with this kind of stuff. There's racism and trafficking and poverty and climate change going on out here. We've got to address these things right now. We've got to do another protest. We've got to do another things, whatever. I think, first of all, let me be very clear. Awareness, which is what I see the Black Lives Matter movement as, is absolutely fundamental. It is important. It's uncomfortable. It's not sexy sometimes. It makes people a little squirmish. It makes people feel like, would you please stop posting that stuff on here, man? Just post a cat meme or something and make me feel good. So that's happening, and I believe it's important. I believe that awareness is the first step. It's got to happen. So those protests and sit-ins and things like that, they've got to happen. Information that's coming out, news and things like that, it's got to come out. And real news, not the government, corporate sponsored kind. This stuff has got to be out there. That's one thing. Lock that in. Number two, immediate short-term response initiatives. I call it aid work. It's absolutely needed. We need charity water to drop wells into villages that need it. We need the Enough campaign in Sudan to stop the immediate threat of the Janjaweed and the tyranny coming down from al-Bashir and so on. We need that. We need probably some more gun control. Now, that's a complicated issue, and I'm not necessarily a huge advocate for gun control. I'm an advocate for a society that doesn't believe they need so many guns. That's what I'm advocating for. Anyway, we need the short-term solutions to remove the immediate threat of the guns in the room with the people fighting. But we also have to remember that if we really want peace, we're going to have the patience to sit down and address the root causes. And that's at a perspective level. At the end of the day, that's where we have to start. That's where we form our beliefs and our values and our priorities. It seems that that's the place that we should be starting at. Not just where the fire is. Not just saying, oh, there's a fire, put it out. But to say, this fire comes back every single day. When are we going to stop fighting that fire every day and start looking into why is this fire starting every day? Why does this keep happening? So number one is perspective. That's where we've got to put our focus, first and foremost. Perspective. A perspective rooted in fear is why we have the division that we have in our world today. And the powers that be are very clear about understanding that if you want to keep people under your control, keep them divided. It's a whole other discussion, but let's just suffice it to say that it's an effective strategy. So number one is perspective. Number two, capitalism. Name a problem that we have in the world: war, trafficking, poverty, climate change even, racism. All of these things are directly rooted in capitalism. Now, am I saying just throw away capitalism? No. I think there's a balance. I think we need to reform it. I think we need a better economic agreement. Capitalism is an agreement, and it's an economic agreement, period. Our money doesn't even exist in anything finite. It's numbers in the air. It's an agreement. We have the opportunity to change that agreement, to reform it, and to create a new economic agreement, and many other social agreements that we have in general in terms of politics and so on, that could be founded in interconnectedness. We have the opportunity to shift that towards something, agreements founded in an interconnectedness rather than control. Suffice it to say. Perspective, capitalism, and here's one nobody likes to talk about: propaganda. Our media is owned by very few companies. It's debatable as to how many and so on, but you could there's about 6 that own all of the different media channels. That's a problem. I highly recommend Noam Chomsky's Manufacturing Consent. Manufacturing Consent. Look it up on YouTube. I'll try and put the link in the notes. Talks very much about this. It was created in 1992, and it's just as relevant today as it was then, maybe more, actually. Propaganda. What's influencing your mind? What's influencing your children's mind? That's important. How are we being manipulated? It's not some big conspiracy theory. You can look on the commercials all day long and see that you're being manipulated into thinking you need this razor, you need this sandwich, you need that product, whatever it is. It's not complicated. It's not conspiracy theory. It's not some crazy loon thing. It's not something that people are going to think you're wearing a tinfoil hat or anything like that. It's just truth. It's easy to see if you just open your eyes and see it. Understand that if you want to address the symptoms that we keep fighting, at the root level, we have to first address perspective. We have to reanalyze our economic agreement, which currently is rooted in capitalism. And we have to be real about the propaganda that we're allowing to enter our minds. We have to be intentional and deliberate about the things we let enter our minds. This is so important. We become what we're so influenced by. We are an amalgamation of all of the experiences and influences that we've had in our lives. Be mindful about what those are. Let's address the perspectives that keep fueling these fires that we have to put out. Let's turn inward and focus on being love. Just be love. Think about if everyone did that, and if everyone said that I'm going to be love and I'm going to set the example for my children and my family, and our family nucleus is going to be love. If everyone did that, I believe that all of the maladies of the world, all of our big world issues and problems would begin to correct themselves and melt away. It takes time, it takes patience, it takes a lot of love, and it takes your involvement. I hope that you're thriving, and I wish you strength and peace as you evolve into love.